Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Screaming Boy Podcast, episode number 27. In our second season, I guess you could say. Episode 27, Let's Go to the Arcade is what I'm going to title this one, because I couldn't think of anything anymore, I couldn't think of a pun or anything. I'm not very bright today. So, yeah. And that voice you hear is the hater of all puns and anything that has to do with puns. That is Josh Calanders. Josh, how you doing?
Hello. Doing well. How are you?
Doing well. We also have with us, of course, is Jesse Starcher. Jesse, how's it going?
Doing great, man. Doing great. I can't wait to discuss tonight's topic. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And also we have with us no stranger to the show and a good friend, Patrick Mullen. Pat, how you doing, buddy?
I have a pocket full of quarters just ready for this episode.
Yes. I broke my piggy bank and I searched the couch cushions and I'm ready to go. So tonight, as the episode title says, we're going to talk a little bit about the arcade. Now, being an 80s kid, and Pat, what do we call you?
Totally 80s.
Totally 80s Pat. Yes, sir. Being an 80s kid, I do remember arcades. I remember the excitement when a new game came in and everybody being crowded around it. I remember Double Dragon hitting the Chapmanville bowling alley, and you couldn't even get to the bowling lanes because there was a line for Double Dragon back so far. And that was back when you could smoke in public places. So it was nothing but like a stale beer and smoke and a bunch of kids.
Yeah, that was back when you could smoke in public places in southern West Virginia. It was all the way back in 2002?
That's 16 years ago.
That's scary.
Oh,
yeah,
God,
but it's still way too late. Still way too late.
Oh, gosh. I still remember being in restaurants. You know what? Smoking or non-smoking? Non. And it was just that thin wall.
It doesn't matter. It's all one big room.
Right. It was that thin wall with about waist high that separated non-smoking from smoking. Like it was some kind of magical barrier of, the smoke can't get past here. But yet it still wafted and mixed with your waffles and stuff. So, because I remember it being at Bob Evans. The arcade. Everybody knows the arcade. It's that dimly lit, room with nothing but bright colors coming from screens and zombie-like stares of young children who are just, all they can do is stare and move their hands, which is much like today with cell phones. But it was one of those things for me. Whenever I went to an arcade, it was another culture. I mean, not everybody really got it. But there were still enough people that it was still, it was so cool back in the 80s. Now, I didn't have an arcade around me, real close. I had the bowling alley and a few other places, but we would go to Charleston, to the town center and, places like that to shop because, Charleston, West Virginia, because I lived in Chapmanville where I had to go an hour to do anything other than bowl. So I would always hit the arcade, man, and it was fantastic. Jesse, well, growing up, did you have an arcade around you?
Yeah,
near you? Okay.
Yeah. You said, what was it called? The place that you went to? Other than the bowling alley in Charleston.
Charleston, the Charleston Town Center.
Was that like a mall?
It was a mall. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much what we had here in our neck of the woods. The mall's over across the river in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Yeah.
And we would go over there, and they had an arcade. The faintest memories that I have before the mall totally changed over to kind of like what you see today. Mm-hmm. It was a dimly lit room. One big place in the center of the arcade to go get your quarters, and you could, you turn yourself loose and go play. There was probably hundreds of games in the arcade here. Well, I say 100. I would probably say that 100, counting pinball and all that.
Well, it seemed like 100 games, but it was probably more like 20 or 30.
You might be right. Pool tables in there, and it was the one place that, when my parents went to the mall, that was a big deal. I don't know about you guys. It's not like that was something my parents did all the time.
Oh, no, yeah.
Okay. So if we were going across the river, driving half an hour, heading to the mall, oh, man, I cannot wait to get to the arcade. And it was probably pretty tough for me to convince my parents to let me go on my own. But finally, when I did, it was like, the leash had been broken and I was never going to be walking around the mall with my parents again. I'm in the arcade. They know where to find me. And that's where I would be. So yeah, man, we had a mall. That's pretty much where most of our, most of the arcade machines were, right there. I can't even think of any other place around here. It wasn't until probably a few years after that some spots started opening up around town that might carry a few arcade games, but the mall was the place to go. Showbiz Pizza was as well. I don't know if we're getting into that at all, but
Showbiz or
Chuck E. Cheese,
Chuck E. Cheese, and Billy Bob's.
Yes,
Billy Bob's.
Billy Bob's, where the animals stare at you with their soulless eyes.
Pat, did they have anything up around your area somewhere?
Yeah.
The only true arcade that we had in Brooklyn was in an amusement park called Coney Island. You may have heard of.
Oh,
And,
may have.
Yeah. So there's a section of Coney Island. Coney Island's divided into two sections, which is basically one for the poor people and one for the affluent people. There's Luna Park, which you pay one general admission place to get into, and then you pay a very high premium to get into Dino's Wonderland. And within Dino's Wonderland is where you had an actual arcade, a bunch of video game cabinets all lined up around each other. Other than that, we really didn't have a true arcade in Brooklyn, but what we did have were stores called bodegas.
Ah, okay.
Say it with me now, bodegas.
Bodega.
And
I like that.
These little independently owned grocery stores were usually dirty and had some not so nice features around them. But I'll be damned if almost every single one of them from the years 1985 to 1998 didn't have an arcade cabinet of some kind in them. And in addition, we didn't have them really in the bowling alleys, but the movie theaters used to have at least 4 of them at a time.
Now, Josh.
Yo.
I know I saved you for last because I know your answer is going to be much like mine. Because we live in the same area as, growing up. But, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned the Chapmanville Bowling Alley, and I'd completely forgotten about that, actually. But yeah, I spent a little bit of time in there. I was going to say probably the only 2 locations that I remember is there's a little place around the corner from my house, this small little local pizza place that had like 2 pinball machines, and I think they had Spy Hunter and Galaga.
Oh, Spy Hunter.
Was it Giovanni's?
Yeah. No, this is a small place that doesn't exist anymore. Some local Middle Eastern family that ran it. I can't remember what the name of it was, but there was that. But really, the biggest one that stood out for me was Billy Bob's.
Now,
like I specifically remember a handful of games that like completely blew my mind.
Now, I know Pat won't know what this is, but I'm thinking maybe Jesse might, but I know Josh does. Camden Park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember the Penny Arcade?
Me personally, the last time I was at Camden Park was probably 5 years ago. So
nice.
I went there, checked it out, but before that, I can't say that I've ever been there.
Now, Camden Park is a amusement park, sort of, in southern West Virginia, in
they try.
In the Huntington area. Now, it is it holds one of the nation's last actual wooden roller coasters, and it's safe-ish. Now, I say that because you
definitely is not.
You can hear there's no loops or twists it's just like lots of ups and downs and curves and stuff. There's no loops or anything like that because it's wooden. But no, that I can remember, I don't think that anybody's been injured on they call it the Big Dipper. it's all the new stuff that does the flips and stuff that people get hurt and die on at Camden Park. So, I shouldn't say that so flippant, but it's true. But
did anybody get hurt or killed at the arcade?
No.
All right, that's good.
They had the Penny Arcade, and the Penny Arcade had all these classic. It was an arcade. It was a little well lit than your normal arcade, but it had all the classic, video games in there. I remember playing at Camden Park, spending time when it was raining, playing Burger Time and Dig Dug, and Burger Time was great. I was really disappointed the first time I went in there as a kid, and it didn't cost just a penny. Everything was a quarter.
Yeah.
But
lies, I say.
Why would you lie to me? This is not a penny.
False advertising.
But it was still that arcade culture inside of an amusement park. Not much, but kind of like Coney Island.
Well, you had a wooden roller coaster, and that's a start.
That is a start.
It was a sad Appalachian attempt.
We also had a ride called the Hot Cat, where you just went around in circles and up and down in a small, tiny little track while they blared heavy metal music at you.
The loudest music you'd ever heard in your life.
Yes. So you're going around this track at about 20 or 30 miles an hour. And it's small, so it feels like you're going much faster, and you're going up and down this on a hill. And there's just, you'll hear like AC/DC or anything, Motley Crue, or, it was, I say heavy metal, but it was more like hair metal. And they were just screaming at you the entire time, and you're like whipping yourself around this thing. And then it's over after the song's done, and you're like, that's it? That's what I waited in line for?
I remember begging for it to be over because it was so loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, now, I'm with you, Jesse. Every time I went to the mall with my parents or with my mom, because my dad was like, I ain't going there.
We all become that man at some point.
He's like, Dad, why don't you want to go there? I don't like people. Okay. But I'm slowly turning into my father. But, I remember begging to go in there, and I would like either save my money or beg for like $5 off my mom, which was a big deal. I come from when $5 was my allowance for the week. So, I would save my allowance or whatever, and I would go into the arcade and just blow it. Not even worry about buying anything, a toy or anything I was interested in as I grew up, and just wanting to play in the arcade. And what was it? I guess it was the fact that, up until that point, consoles were either few and far between in homes or, non-existent. Mm-hmm. I did not have an Atari. I did not have a Neo Geo or anything like that. I had a classic NES, and that took forever to get. So, this was my my video game fix. That's why I was so excited to get there and pump quarters into these machines and play games that that I could didn't have a chance to play at home or anything like that.
See, but this is the thing too, though, Ronnie, is that I had the consoles before I ever stepped foot into an arcade or played a cabinet.
Really?
But,
yeah, I did too.
Yeah, but part of the draw was the cabinets were capable of so much more than what you could bring home.
That is very true.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah. That is very, very true, because I think of it was just highlighted on Stranger Things, but I think of Dragon's Lair. Nobody had seen anything like that. Console, PC. Well, PC mostly had things like Oregon Trail, where you just got dysentery and died, and Pitfall, which was awesome. I don't care. I still love Pitfall to this day.
Yeah, Pitfalls.
But you had video games like Dig Dug, and I keep going back to Dig Dug because I love it.
Yeah, I love Dig Dug too.
So you had Dig Dug, and then you had Galaga, you had Joust, and Ghosts and Goblins. You had all these things that you couldn't obviously get on the console, on the NES or anything like that until later. Then, like I said, Dragon's Lair, which was basically a cartoon come to life in this arcade, this cabinet.
Yeah, it was straight up animation. I mean,
Yeah.
you were watching. It blew my little mind away when I saw that on the screen in an arcade cabinet. And of course, it probably took, I don't know how many years before I understood what is actually going on. All it is just changing animation depending upon which correct button you.
It was a terrible game.
I can't. It was completely designed to rape your quarters, man.
Right.
I mean, it would just be pump your quarters in because you got to see what happens next.
And it was the most expensive arcade game of the time.
It was. I will agree with that.
It's funny that you all mentioned that because I don't think to this day I don't think I've ever seen one of those in real life.
Really?
Oh, the actual cabinet.
Yeah. No, well, plus like you all, I'm glad. I think Patrick mentioned the console stuff. Like I'm a few years younger than Jesse and Ronnie, I think.
Mm. Jesse and I are the same age.
Okay, yeah. So I by the time I was getting into video games, it was like the height of NES days.
Yeah.
So I was, a couple hours ago, I was kind of looking through kind of some of the early, most popular actual arcade games, and the vast majority of them I played on console for the first time. Like Donkey Kong, Marble Madness, Space Harrier, Bubble Bobble, Burger Time, Strider, Bionic Commando, 1942, Rolling Thunder. Like I didn't even know at the time that any of those were arcade games. Like I played all of those on a console for the first time.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what was your thought when you went into an arcade and you actually saw these, these games that you played on a console in an arcade?
Well, I don't know that I saw the first time that I went. It was at Billy Bob's. I think it was like mine or my buddy's 9th or 10th birthday.
Yeah.
And the games that I remember standing out so much are that Simpsons arcade beat 'em up, the X-Men arcade beat 'em up.
Yes.
Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, and Narc.
Yeah. Narc.
And are those not all really staples for all of us? Those games?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The Avengers arcade game.
Captain America, and Iron Man, and Hawkeye.
Yep.
Dude, that comes up on
another
the most
one.
Recent. That's another one I played so much on Genesis.
Yeah.
I never saw that. I never saw that in arcade either.
You know what the funny thing is like that one, okay, whenever I tried to rent it from a video store for Genesis, it was never there. Whenever I would go to like Toys R Us after it was like a birthday or something, and you'd have enough money to buy a video game, it was never there.
Never there. Yep.
So I had to go.
So good on console.
I would have to go to the only mall in Brooklyn is King's Plaza. But they don't have an arcade there. But what they had was a Red Robin restaurant, and they had that cabinet.
Oh, no kidding.
And 4 years ago, I was doing a little bit of extra work with some moving, and a guy had 2 arcade cabinets that he was just getting rid of and didn't want. So I took them for as long as I could. One of them was Street Fighter 2, and one of them was Captain America and the Avengers.
Nice.
Wow.
Rules.
That Captain America and the Avengers comes up on the latest source material.
And it
goes so well.
Oh, I swear, man. Mark Radulich brings it up, and I swear I'm almost calling his bluff. Like, yeah, right, you're making this up, and then he goes and finds the dialogue that Captain America says right at the beginning.
Yep.
And things just get unhinged.
It was riddled with translation errors.
Clearly.
Translation or just absolute laziness. Like, it was so great.
Oh, yeah. The X-Men game had it, too.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
I am Magneto, master of magnet.
I forgot about that.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh! What was the game that did all your base are belong to us?
That was a Genesis game, I believe.
Yeah,
I don't
remember
that
what it was. Like something 2049 or something.
I don't remember ever play. I didn't know about that game until it became a meme.
Oh yeah,
Like it was
Same
not.
here.
Yeah, it was not like it was on. Yeah, it was Genesis. It was.
I want to say it's like something fighter or
Zero Wing, I think.
Zero Wing. Wow.
Okay. Yep. I was way off.
Dumb.
Now, and the other arcade game was that I played a lot through the years was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that was fantastic. Now, I guess my next question is the whole. Like I said, it was a culture. I mean, it really was. It still is. But we'll just go with this one. Jesse, going to the arcade, what was that one game that called to you as soon as you hit the door? You made a beeline for it, whether there was a line out the door for it or not. What was that one game?
Well, this came out in I'm fairly certain the 90s. It may have been the very late 80s, but that would easily be 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
That video game was the one. Now, earlier than that, it'd be tough for me to say because I don't know if I could even. Yeah, I can remember going in and spending plenty of quarters. The Return of the Jedi game. You know, a lot. If it had a sit down cabinet, all right, I know it was going to cost 50 cents, 75 cents, or $1 or whatever to play. I was all about it, but clearly it was going in and playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4-player as long as I could. And I loved that game. I can remember my stepdad coming into the arcade, and then when I would be done, I'd turn around, and there he stood, and he would tell me he'd have to take like steps back because I'm sitting there, you know, I'm jumping back and forth, hitting buttons and you know, ducking and dodging and doing all sorts of stupid stuff I didn't need to do. But as a kid, you know, you're just having a good time.
Yeah.
But man, that arcade game it felt like you were playing as near to the cartoon as you could, because again, just like Pat said, these cabinets had enough graphical power to make you go, oh, you know, they made you take notice. It was, you know, when games ported were ported over to a home console, they lost a lot of those graphics because the power of the home console just was not anything compared to what they had dedicated to this one game in that one cabinet. But yeah, and it had great voices. It made you the freaking, while the game is sitting there in demo mode, it's the intro to the cartoon practically. If I remember correctly, that was the game. There was no turning back. When I had quarters, I was starting right there.
Very good.
Josh, same question.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with the X-Men one.
Okay.
I mean, I'd pretty much just gotten into comics and was buying one every 3 months or something at the local gas station or whatever. But they always had like the X-Men Classic issues on their little spinny wire comic holder. And I think that X-Men cartoon had just come out because I think that whole arcade game was based on those same character designs.
You're talking about the Pride of the X-Men cartoon?
Yeah, yep.
Very cool. Pat, when you went to Coney Island, what was your go-to game?
No surprise, it released in June of 1991, WWF WrestleFest. Still, to this day, my favorite wrestling game.
Nice.
That was at the theater down here in Marietta for quite a while. And I mean, you know, just like you guys said, you go to the theater, there's like maybe 4 games there, but you got what you got. Yeah. And that game was there all the time. Where didn't that have Demolition on it? And Demolition was jabbering with Mean Gene, and they would always have you had Earthquake and Boss Man as a tag team. Am I thinking of the right one, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, it had 2 versions that you could play as. You could play Saturday night's main event mode, where you could team up any of the 2 superstars you picked With the exception of Demolition, you'd have to pick both of them if you picked one. And you'd play a tag team tournament to beat the Legion of Doom for the belts, and then you could play Royal Rumble mode, which was essentially what the name lived up to.
Very cool. Okay, I just thought of something. What was that really horrible wrestling game where it was more like it was more like something like Street Fighter or something, and I remember the Undertaker would conjure up these tombstones made of energy.
Oh, dude, that game was super fun.
The guy
there's two. There's WrestleMania, the arcade game, and In Your House. But WrestleMania is the console one, or not the console one. WrestleMania actually had arcade cabinets.
Okay,
I think it was In Your House.
Well, I could remember
It was a little brighter.
Just recently, James Rolfe, Angry Video Game Nerd, he did something on his channel where he played that game because I'd never seen that game before. What you're talking about, I've never seen it, and then when I saw it pop up, I was like, "What is this? This looks so awesome!" Because there was crazy ass animations.
Yeah,
I had In Your House for PlayStation.
Nice. Now my go-to was always like a fighting game. When it first came out, it was Double Dragon. Double Dragon was my go-to game because you could actually throw the knives or use the nunchucks or whatever they had on there. And then after that settled down, my go-to, no matter what, was Street Fighter 2.
Amen.
And I would always get Ryu or however you want to say his name. And it was Fireball City for me, man. So why do you keep throwing a fireball? Because it's awesome.
Because I know how.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one move I can do.
That's it.
The dragon uppercut is, I can't do that. I can't do that.
When it comes to fighting games, there's two kinds of people in this world. You're a Street Fighter person, or you're a Mortal Kombat person.
Yep, I'm a Street Fighter person.
Guy. I am a Street Fighter guy, as largely the Brooklyn, New York populace was. Whereas in Jersey, and this is how you know you're wrong if you pick it, they like Mortal Kombat.
I liked Mortal Kombat. I had Mortal Kombat on the NES, or Super Nintendo, I should say. And see, if I was it the Nintendo or was it the Genesis? You could turn the blood on.
I think it was Genesis.
Genesis. You couldn't do that on the Super Nintendo. No.
Now it's like halfway to.
Yeah,
Jeez.
I know exactly what you mean.
Gosh, they're showing X-rays of bones being broken, and then you get a cut scene. They're worshiping Satan and everything else, and I'm like, what is going on?
But
fatality.
Street Fighter was your go-to, right?
Yeah,
Did you ever get the console version of it for like Sega or Super Nintendo?
Oh, for Super Nintendo, man.
Not the same experience at all.
Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all. Because I was a Dalsim guy on console.
That was Street Fighter.
That's what we're talking about.
I thought you said Mortal Kombat.
I was a Scorpion guy, no matter what.
I'm a Mortal Kombat guy here, so I'm just going to go ahead and say that I probably spent maybe $3 on Street Fighter my whole life because I knew the people that I could potentially go up against in this game would, I'm out of money. So, you put your quarter up and then you lose your quarter. That's me. So I was more along the lines of like, okay, I'll watch somebody play some Street Fighter, but I wanted to get in and play some Mortal Kombat. And I wanted to see, blood fly, potential fatalities, all that great stuff. So that was the one I spent my most money on. And I never became a Street Fighter dude. I just couldn't do it.
But was not the best part of either one of those games in an arcade setting when you would get a crowd of like 10 or 12 kids, everybody just in line, next man on, whoever wins stays on.
Yeah.
Just rapid fire, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And you always have that one guy who could go on a run on any given day and just mop the floor with everybody.
Oh, yeah. Scary stuff.
I remember, like I said, the Chapmanville Bowling Alley and Double Dragon first coming in, and I was in line, and you would, if somebody lost, you would put a quarter in. or put a quarter down, and that means you're next.
Yeah.
So I was next in line, and I put a quarter in, and the guy went, "Thanks," and kept playing.
What a jerk!
Oh.
That was the first time I remember being a young kid that I ever wanted to punch somebody in the sack in my life. I was like, I just really want to hit you right now, but I didn't because I was, the quiet kid with the glasses and didn't want to get them broken on my face. And, I was like, but no, okay.
Well, if you guys were frequenting like the same spots, did y'all have like the regulars who had that magic touch on one game that you knew like this guy's the best at this, and he was like always there?
I always saw the initials.
Yeah, okay. The high score.
Yeah.
I can say, unfortunately, not on my end, just because we didn't get to the mall enough. It was one of those special occasions. So I felt like an outsider walking in there, and I was just like, okay, well, where am I going to go now? Because clearly, you had the certain people that did play the games a lot. I can remember when I would walk into an arcade, the guy that stood at the arcade cabinet the longest, I was just like, okay, this guy likes this game. He's obviously good at it. And then that would be that. I'd just go find something else to do. But the arcade culture for me, when I was growing up, I don't know if it was 10 years after. It was 1988, 1987, whatever. So, getting friends together and going to an arcade was a very rare occurrence.
Yeah.
And comparing it to now, I can remember when we got Call of Duty for the Xbox, and I was playing games with my friends. I would have loved to have experienced that at the arcade. Actually being able to play with my friends, like three guys, get on and every once in a while that would happen at it. It's my birthday, time to go to Showbiz, and I get to reach in there and pull the ball out, see how many tokens I get.
Yeah.
that's
very
why
the year, if that. Go ahead.
That's why Billy Bob's always stood out for me, because that was like, it was my buddy's birthday party.
Yeah.
And so like several of our friends were there and everything. You get to run around. It was the first time I ever saw that X-Men game, that Ninja Turtles game, and all these things. You got to play full 4-player spreads with all these dudes that you actually knew, instead of like, I'll just jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a blast.
See, we didn't really. That's the one thing about not having the arcade, is we didn't have a lot of accessibility to that. But like we had like a neighborhood hangout that had like, it would have like 4 random video games at a time. Like, and it started, with like the X-Men game, a pinball machine, Dig Dug, and like something else. And like the last days that place was open, it had the Crazy Taxi sit down like cabinet. It had Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and it had a cabinet for NFL Blitz or NBA Showtime.
Nice.
And it cost $2 to play a full game, because they charged you 50 cents per quarter. So literally, you would have to spend your whole day's allowance in order to play a full game on that cabinet. So I always ended up playing Marvel vs. Capcom more often than not. And we had a guy there that we literally called him Capcom Rob.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that rules.
He was Capcom Rob, because that's like every time you'd see him, he'd be playing Marvel vs. Capcom with 2 new characters, and he'd be doing every move and every combo and knew it all. And this is when that game wasn't available on a console.
It's not like you could get on the internet and go figure out the moves.
Plus Marvel vs. the first Marvel vs. Capcom was only available like on a limited run on Saturn or something. And
it wasn't awful.
It wasn't until like the second one came out that was more readily available on a bunch of consoles. But I had notes down about like some of my favorite arcade games of all time, and they're like half of them are Capcom fighter games, a little bit more newer. So like X-Men versus Street Fighter, I had on something. I think I had that one on Saturn, and then the first 2 Marvel versus Capcom games. I think the second one came out like I was in college, and there was a Billy Bob's there in Barbersville that I was able to drive to, and I spent way too much money. God, I love those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's one of those things you can track the evolution of, like, because there was always that next level eventually of a Capcom fighting game with characters. It went from Street Fighter 2 in, that cabinet, and then the next one we got was Marvel Superheroes cabinet.
Yeah,
with Thanos as the boss. Then we got X-Men Children of the Atom.
That was it. Yeah, Children of the Atom. That's
I
the one
love
I was
that
of.
game.
Yep.
And then it went to X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom, Marvel versus Capcom 2, which unfortunately was really like the end of that whole arcade cabinet era.
Now, real quick question about arcade games. Were you all into the shooter games? Like Area 51, that terrible Aerosmith shooter game.
Revolution X or something. Or what is it called? Revolution X or something?
Yeah. Oh,
where they would just scream "Eat the Rich" at you the entire time.
Yeah, was that the Aerosmith one?
Yeah.
It was so much fun, but it was so bad.
It was so terrible, but I loved it. And Area 51. Did y'all play Area 51?
Yep.
Yeah, dude, that was a staple at the arcade that I worked at. So I kind of knew that game backwards and forwards. Unfortunately, it was a pain.
My shooter was like, for the longest time, House of the Dead.
Oh, great shooter or great game, terrible movie.
Yeah, it was. That was a sit down, right? You sat down in like a. Did you sit down?
We did.
You had a stand up cabinet.
Yeah, it was cabinets with the guns, and to reload the gun, you had to shoot off screen.
Yep.
Okay.
That was the one with the fantastic voice acting. It was so good. Like, it was so stupidly bad. Is that Suffer Like G Did? Is that game?
I have no idea. What is that?
It's like this. You're fighting this demon, this little demon, and it's flying around, and it says, like one of the characters earlier on was named just G.
Oh, okay.
And then it has this terrible, terrible moment where it says "Suffer Like G Did." It's so bad.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't remember if it was House of the Dead or not.
On YouTube, but I don't see what it. Yeah, I know it's House of the Dead 2. That's my mistake. Either way, it's bad.
Either way, it was terrible. What would shoot? What was the one Time
Crisis?
Time Crisis. Yeah. Yeah. But go ahead, Jesse.
I was just going to say I keep thinking of some of the games you mentioned. I started working in an arcade in the early 2000s, like 2001. Yeah. But anyway, some of the titles that you guys are you're talking about here, they showed up. No, that's not what I meant. Some of the titles you're rambling off that you're saying here are, I caught the later generation, like the sequels in my arcade, like Time Crisis 3. Holy crap, was that a beautiful game?
Yes, it
was. Because you had the pedal.
Is that the foot pedal? Yeah.
Yep, you had the foot pedal, you had the guns, you had the ways ours was set up. We had two humongous screens. I mean, they were huge. And you could obviously play multiplayer. Your buddy's right there with you as you're pressing down and boom, 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 boom. But yeah, the later generation of that game was when you got a pretty expensive cabinet along with it. I mean, it had neon lights and all sorts of great stuff. But I don't recall. I don't know if we had the original or if we had the sequel. But anyway, go ahead, man.
No, I was just thinking about Tom. I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, that was a really good game.
It's funny. You mentioned shooter games, and I was like, yeah, shooters. Like, I was thinking something completely different. Like, one of my early favorites was 1942.
Oh, yeah.
Like the top-down shooter type things. I still love those games.
Those, I was going to say.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead, Jesse.
I had the opportunity to play 1942, and I never was great at those types of games. Now, shooter-wise, the one that comes to my mind is there's a Terminator 2 game, wasn't there? Like a Terminator 2? Dude.
It's still at the Logan Theater.
Is it really? It's a classic. It is probably one of my favorites that I like to play. Narc was one you mentioned. I don't remember playing too much of that. Operation Wolf. I don't know if you.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that was another one that kind of sparked a memory. Those were probably the two shooters. I remember Revolution X, by the way, and I didn't play that one very often. But go ahead, Pat.
How about Metal Slug?
Oh God, dude, Metal Slug's so good,
dude.
Yeah.
My before I left the arcade in Heath, my boss brought in a Neo Geo cab. Okay, that had it had
Bubble Bobble,
Metal
Bubble
Slug,
the best.
and there were a couple other games on there. I was like, they were great. Metal Slug was so fun to play. Bubble Bobble was fun though. When it comes to Neo Geos, I think I would go in the morning. I'd have all this time to before anybody's, school's in, so nobody's coming in the arcade at 10 o'clock in the morning. I would stand out there and play Bubble Bobble for probably half hour, 45 minutes, and then just
amazing.
Yeah, that was Neo Geos were a lot of fun back when they were brand new and they brought these things in, and then all of a sudden, even as time went on, they still stayed playable.
They're still pretty solid. You can find Neo Geo cabs now, and they usually have 3, 4, 5 games on them or something.
And they're usually a quarter versus 50 cents.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the Neo Geo. You were talking about consoles not being as good as the cab versions and stuff, but that the Neo Geo home system, that was the only case where that wasn't true because. I never had one. I never even played one. They were super rare because they were crazy dumb expensive.
Yep.
The console was $1,000, and each game was $250 because the cartridges were stupid big.
That was pretty much what they used.
They used in the cabinet. Exactly. They took the exact same board that they had in the cabinet and just put a physical cartridge around it. And you were able to plug it into a home console. It was the laziest, most genius thing ever. But it was just, dude, nobody was going to be able to spend $1,250 on one game and a system.
You had to get joysticks and the 6-button joysticks in order to play some of the games. And those things, I don't know, there's still a market for those. People build their own joystick and 6-button controllers that are huge that sit on your lap. It's amazing the amount of money that you would have had to put into just to play a fighting game decently. It would have looked perfect on your screen, but if you would have had a regular old 6-button Genesis controller, I don't know if you would have been able to pull off all those smooth moves.
Well, it was so much easier on the cabinet controls too, those fighting games. The stick just that's what the stick was made for.
It was
the joystick was made for that, and then you've got a four pad directional thing for consoles, and it just hurt your thumb, and it just wasn't. Just wasn't what it was for. It's frustrating.
What is for?
It's garbage. It's total garbage.
Now, there was always that one game that was always empty that you never wanted to play, but you had to maybe play it just to pass time. And it was the bane of your existence, but somehow it kept drawing you back. Jesse, what was yours?
Man, oh man, I don't know, dude. I mean, right now I'm looking at a website called Totally 80s, not a sponsor of Pat Mullen, but it had, or at least it did have, the top 20 arcade games. Now, the one I'm sorry, I didn't like Frogger.
Yeah, me neither.
I was not a fan. I'll play Donkey Kong before I play Frogger. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on this list.
Man, I almost forgot about Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong, buddy. That was I think the big hit of the one of the big hits. I mean, I'm certainly not going to I'm not going to talk bad about Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man or anything like that.
Right.
That wasn't something. I'll go with Frogger. It seemed too simple to me. As bad as that sounds, it just seemed like it was too simple. I'm in the process right now. I'm about 3 episodes in. There's a series on Amazon. I think it came out on YouTube, and it's called The Arcade Years. All right. It's very much in the vein of what was the VH1 series about the 80s? What was it called?
I love the 80s.
I love the 80s.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So it's very much, you could see the similarity of how this is set up compared to that. This came out in like 2000, I want to say 2012, 2013, maybe a little bit later than that, maybe 2014. But either way, it's going year by year and talking about some of these great video games that have come out. Now, I'm only up to like 1983, I think. But they did talk about this, Donkey Kong pretty much just showed up. And how it kind of took the world by storm. Very interesting series, though, because they talk a lot about the arcade games. They talk a lot about the home console and PC games, too. So if you guys are interested, check it out. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Frogger, Ronnie Adams.
All right. Pat, what about you?
All the games that were out in arcades that were available on console by, like, 1986, 87, I really didn't care for any of those. So, like, I know it's blasphemy, but I wasn't really into the Froggers, the Centipedes, the Galagas, those type of games. But if there was one that was really actually, I'll give you one that was really disappointing that I thought was going to be awesome and I never got to play. And when I finally did, I thought it stunk. Was a game called King of the Monsters. You guys remember that one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this like a
I
Godzilla?
love that on console.
Yeah, I was going to say, I may have seen the console version or heard of it, but is it like some kind of like monster game?
It's basically like a combination of Rampage and a wrestling game.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, like you had kind of more of a map to roam around and break stuff while you were fighting another monster.
That sounds like such an awesome concept. How could it suck?
It was awesome.
Exactly. it's too awesome to fail, but it fails miserably. Like it basically had like what looked to be like kaiju monsters and a character who looked like a mixture of Ultraman and Captain America.
Yeah.
And you'd win the fight by pinning the other monster, literally pinning them for a 3 count, or throwing them out of the ring. And man, it just sucked. The gameplay was slow. You constantly bumped into stuff that so the motion, the detection was bad. It just sucked.
Mine was Cubert.
Oh, dude, you took it from me.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
As soon as you said that, I was like, I'm going
out
with Cubert for sure.
I'm sorry. It was that game that I tried to figure out, and I just needed to. I hated playing it, but I couldn't figure it out. It made 0 sense. 0 sense.
To this day, I still don't know what the point was. Like, how do you get to the next level? How do you avoid having the dude curse?
You change every color to the exact same color. I played that game once for like 10 minutes, and I just was done. I didn't want to ever see it again.
Right, until it was the only one not being played and everything else, and I was like, well, I guess I could try this again. And it became almost an obsession with me, saying, I need to figure this out.
Maybe I'll figure it out now. Nope.
Pat, I now know what the goal is. I didn't even know what the goal was back then.
2018.
It took me from the late 80s to now to figure this out.
2018.
Thank you, sir. You have... I'm about to cry, really.
Yeah, I actually want to play it now.
I do too, because I want to try it.
Because now you know what to do.
Right. I want to... did they make Qbert for the iPhone? But
I'm sure they do.
That's the other thing. All of these games you can download on something as small as your phone. Forget consoles, but you can play Pac-Man on your iPhone, which is terrible, but it's still you can play it. But as far as arcades, that was it was such a great time to be to play and to be in there and to be with your people, the fellow nerds, I guess you could say. But even back then, you didn't have to be, I don't use it in a derogatory term. I love being called a nerd because I am. It just means I'm passionate about things. but you didn't even have to be quote unquote a nerd to play that. I mean, you saw even the most popular kids in the arcade in the '80s, in the '90s, early '90s. So now you all mentioned, Pat. You said there was almost an end to the arcade era with the release of which game was it?
For me, like the last 2 games we got in were Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Crazy Taxi.
So it kind of you saw the arcade kind of die a little bit. You go into the mall and it would be kind of like there'd be like 1 or 2 people in there and the person working, and that's it. And I would still go in and play and then leave after a couple of games. But there was something that brought about kind of a resurgence. One game that everybody would line up and play. And it was another one. You'd have that one guy or that one girl that was amazing at it, and while you were waiting, you would play the other games. And that was Dance Dance Revolution.
Oh, yeah. Well, now.
Yeah, so that kind of brought back a resurgence of an arcade, of the arcade. And, you saw people lining up in droves to play DDR. And you had the one kid with the crazy legs that would hold on to the bar and just, and his whole upper torso wouldn't move, but his legs.
Crazy Legs Johnson.
Crazy Legs Johnson is what we called him. He was the best DDR player in the land.
Yeah, like we had a resurgence in clogging thanks to that game.
Yep, yeah, pretty much. I had a cousin who clogged.
Come on.
I swear.
It's one of the best sentences I've ever heard. I had a cousin who clogged.
She was good. But as far as clogging goes.
Yeah.
But I have so many things to compare that to.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. So, and then, after DDR kind of, leveled out and not died off, people still play it. Arcades kind of took that dip again a little bit, but there is now in our culture, there is a longing, a yearning for nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
So you find a lot of arcades popping up, but they don't do it in the normal, arcade manner, like laser games or whatever you name your arcade back in the day to make it people come in.
Laser One.
Laser One. Yeah, there you go. I knew I got laser from
with somewhere. A Z? Was it with a Z?
No, we did. We spelled it correctly. We did.
Oh,
no. But now they're leaning more towards there's a place here in Greensboro, I believe, in North Carolina, that is it's basically it's a craft beer
arcades
bar.
Are the best.
It's a barcade, and they have all these classic games and everything. I was in Orlando a couple of years back. Has it been that long? Yeah. I went on a family vacation, and there's a place it's a pop culture store in a co-op mall called Gods and Monsters. Shout out to Gods and Monsters, one of the best stores I've ever been in.
That's a great name.
Yeah, I mean, and Josh Clarence, you would lose your mind at the statues that they had there. And they had all these 80s and 90s toys on racks and new release comic books on one wall. Their cash wrap, they had it decorated out to look like Arkham Asylum. And, you would walk in a door that was the door leading into Arkham, and each cash wrap window had bars on it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was great. But you go in the back, and there was a little bar that sold craft beer and mixed drinks and stuff like that, and had booths and tables set up. They had the tables set up for tabletop gaming. The booths all had random graphic novels, store graphic novels laying around, so you could sit and drink and relax and read a graphic novel. And I noticed on the other side they had all these cabinet games. So I went over, and one of them was Jesse was the Punisher.
Nice.
And
I can't remember if that was a shooter, obviously, right?
Wasn't great.
Third person one with Nick Fury?
No, this was. I don't know what this one was, to be honest with you. I didn't get to play it.
Okay, did we have a joystick or did we have a gun? Do you remember?
Joystick.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Yeah. But they weren't. I noticed something. They weren't the original console or original cabinet games. they were the Android Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, they had emulator cabs.
They had emulator,
Ah.
cabinets, and which was brilliant because they still charged a quarter for them.
Yeah, you're getting your money, and you, yeah.
They put much less money into it than a real cabinet.
Yeah. You're basically dealing with, when it comes to arcades and when it comes to emulators, I mean, you have all those games in one tiny little space.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of that.
But I think there's something to be said for, I know it's obviously less cost effective, but I definitely think it's a bigger draw to have the actual cabinets. And what we have up here is a place, it's a franchise basically called Yestercade. And Yestercade is 3 locations in the New York, New Jersey area. And they have the full cabinets, ton of different games available. And what you do is it's you can get drinks there and stuff, and you pay like X amount of money for X amount of time throughout the place to play these games. So let's say you plop down, you pay $20 and you got an hour for whatever amount of games you want to play.
Yeah.
I would love to actually. I've never been in an arcade like that, a barcade at all. I think the last time I actually stepped foot into a place that was designated strictly for an arcade has been a very, very long time. Well, other than the one I worked at, but other than that, just as something to do, I've not done in a long time.
Yeah, I've not. Oh, it's sad to say I haven't stepped foot in an arcade in a long time, and I really need to. I really want to.
There's a barcade here in Indy called Tappers Arcade Bar. And
nice.
The awesome thing about that place is that all the arcades are free. Like you don't have to put a quarter in for anything, except for the pinball machines. The pinball machines cost a quarter or something like that.
That's nice.
Yeah. Now the other thing, I know a lot of us said that Billy Bob's and places like that, and the Penny Arcade and Coney Island, skee ball in these arcades. Were you all a big? We'll start with Pat, Josh, Jesse. Skee ball, yes or no?
Okay, I have a great skee ball story. I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
I was staying at Disney World, the Florida one, whatever one it was between Land and World. I think it's World, but in 2002 with my cousins, and we were bored out of our minds because there's not a lot of stuff to do at night, and we'd be up at like 3 a.m. looking for something to do. The place we were staying had an arcade with skee ball, and in addition to WrestleFest, believe it or not. And at some point you got bored of WrestleFest. It happened. I didn't believe it, but it happened. And so we were playing in this arcade at 3 a.m. when there's nobody there. And so what we did was, with the skee ball, we basically reached underneath the gate because nobody was looking and just dunked every ball in the 500 hole just to cheat and get the high score.
Nice.
No, it's not nice. I worked in an arcade. We had skee ball, and man, I apologize for my audio here if it's horrible. I mean, I realized that my computer was running really slow for some reason. That might have something to do with it.
Turn the porn off.
High def streams. I guess.
No, Jesse, no. We're not. We're having a nice show. We're not going down this road.
I just want to know what you won for your efforts there, Pat Mullen.
Honestly, it's not like it dispensed tickets either. That's the whole thing. It just let you put initials in.
Gotcha. All right. Well, then I won't gripe too hard about that.
That's why it's even more pathetic that we did that.
Josh, skee ball.
Yes, God loves skee ball.
Yes, he does. Yeah. And we all know that Jesse is a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Skee ball
enthusiast, connoisseur.
Nazi.
First time.
Follow the rules. No. He's a connoisseur, so he got a little angry at Pat there about the rules.
No, I kicked people out because of because of doing that. I had to. It's partly my job, and part of it because I love doing it. Some D-bag I caught cheating. I walk in there. It's funny because they've got to angle themselves just right to put all them balls in there, and by the time they get out of the cage, they're looking right at me. I'm like, okay, you can walk, and I'll take your tickets, and I'll give it to the kid over here, which is pretty much in the first place. But no, I mean, I wasn't a big skee ball fan. I can remember, again, going back to showbiz. Showbiz is probably the first time I ever seen skee ball.
Yeah,
I can. That was probably the first time I was ever introduced to tickets getting prizes, which was just, oh man, I get to go home in my styrofoam airplane that I got from Billy Bob's. But skee ball, I was more the video game guy. Tickets and skee ball, and I sucked at it, so I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to try and get good. I don't want to get good, bro.
And the other game that I hated in the arcade was the basketball. I didn't like that. So, all right. The other thing, I basically asked all my questions. My love for the arcade is still there. I want to go to an arcade. I guess I'm going to come down to this. Jesse.
Yes, sir.
What is your favorite story from the time that you worked at the arcade? It can be the funniest thing you've ever seen, the coolest thing you've ever seen, but you were the one that of us, all of us four, that has actually had put in hours into an arcade, that many hours because you were there for work. So you've seen everything coming and going in an arcade, I'm sure. So what was that one standout story in your mind?
Okay, I worked at an arcade for close to, it was 2001, right after the 9/11 attacks. I can remember the going in there and the mall actually shutting down. Like it was like my second day of work because of the concerns that they had. And we, as an arcade, your business depends a lot upon location. So we located our location was right by the cafeteria, and it was also right by a theater. So we had all that business that would come in there throughout the night, and even after the mall closed, the cafeteria closed, the theater was still open, so we could kind of remain open a little bit later than the mall did. So anyway, shortly after I started working there, I was working with my friends. I think that was probably the best job I ever had. The guys that I worked with there they had worked with me at KFC, and we kind of grew up together. And then we got the job at the arcade, and it was just kind of like, hey, we're having a good time. We're getting paid. We're working at a freaking arcade.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is great. So my friend Brian becomes manager. I become assistant manager. So I'll give you like the craziest story that we ever had. All right. And there were plenty of other great stories, but this one probably takes the cake. Somebody crapped in our arcade. Okay. All right.
Go on.
Now, our arcade wasn't huge. It was one thing that Laser One made sure that they did was they had it well lit. This was 2000, so you wanted to make arcades a safe place. You wanted to get away from that idea that they had back in the 80s and the 90s of the bad people that go there, the kids, the delinquents.
Yeah.
This was something we well lit, bright colors, family friendly, tickets, prizes, all that stuff. But it was still a small store. Well, in kind of like a back area, we had air hockey. Now, air hockey's fun. I don't know if you guys like air hockey. But
I love air hockey.
Yeah, air hockey's a blast.
Usually walk away with at least one injury, though.
Air hockey's a lot of fun. I got a picture shortly after me and my wife got married where we were playing air hockey together. But so at some point in the night, it was some Friday night, I guarantee it, because I don't know what happened. If it was a small kid, young adult, old adult, I don't know. Left a trail of crap.
Oh.
And we're not talking just smears, my friends.
Oh no.
We're talking clumps, okay?
No.
Physically sick individual.
Some person.
There's clearly an illness involved.
The bathroom's right down. The bathroom is right there. This person couldn't make it. So anyway, we find out about this, and we're like, oh, my gosh, what are we going to do? Luckily, I'm the assistant manager. I can look to my manager, and I'd be like, wait, what are we doing? What do we got to do? So we call, mall maintenance. And mall maintenance, I mean, really, they could have just said, hey, this is your store. It's your job to clean it up.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would have done.
I've done 2 instances of puke because the guys I worked with couldn't handle cleaning that up. Well, I wasn't touching crap, all right? I'm not doing that. But if we had to, we had to. Either way, mall maintenance came in and did it. They came in and started cleaning up. But before they could get started, they, taped the place off. All right, so we had it looked like it was a crime scene, my friends. We had the yellow tape going across so nobody would come back in that section to play air hockey. All right, that's because there was crap somewhere, and we wanted to make sure we got every little bit of it. We didn't know if this person picked it up and then went and played some Time Crisis or
that's true.
Went and played Virtual Cop back there.
Just smeared it all over the gun.
We're just, we're taking precautions. Well, some bros decided that they had to play air hockey. And even though there's the tape is clearly there. Keep out of the area. All you have to do is stay out of the area. They get under the tape and they go and play air hockey. So I walk back there. They're in the middle of their game. And I'm like, I got this spray bottle, whatever cleaner I had in my hand, a big rag or napkins in the other. And I asked them, I said, did you guys see the tape? And, they stopped. They're kind of in the middle of their game, and they're looking at me. I'm like, yeah, somebody just crapped all over the place back here. And they just kind of look at each other. They drop their paddles, and they walk out.
Oh, yes. Well, then. Good day.
Oh, there's feces involved.
Yes.
Good day, shopkeep.
Yes.
I believe I've had enough today.
I understand the game works. It doesn't mean you have to play it right now. Give it a few seconds and let us take care of the biological hazard that we have here. So, yes.
We apologize, good sir. We did not know it was a fecal emergency.
But yes, I'll never forget those dudes having to come to the realization that air hockey was not that important. It wasn't that important on that night. So yes, there you go. There's my arcade store. I had my goodness, a lot of good times in that place. I played. I mean, look, when you got the keys, free play it was something that was such a luxury when you watched everybody come in there and spend all this money to play video games.
Yeah.
You'd open up the coin box. You just tap a few credits in, and we played. I remember probably close to 3 hours of Buck Hunter between 3 of us. We just sat there and we're like, all right, who's getting top score now? And then one person would run up and run the counter for a few minutes.
Buck Hunter.
And then we just go back and play Buck Hunter for another hour. So
wow,
it was a lot of fun. I'll tell you right now that it was easily my favorite job of my whole life. Working at an arcade, I worked with my buddies for a while, and then I even went and managed one down in Bluefield, West Virginia.
Yeah,
with my wife. Now, working with your wife is something that, oh man, I really didn't know if I wanted to get into. But she was my assistant manager. We got along fine. We didn't get divorced. And then a year later, the arcade shut down. Lucky us. But we found another. We ended up. It was a whole coup and all sorts of crazy stuff. Ended up going to another arcade. Ran by the guy that was kind of like the vice president of the company up in Heath, which was about 5 hours away up in Ohio. But again, continued my career as an arcade manager. And then you guys talk about the decline of the arcade industry.
Yeah,
I come into the arcade industry as it is clearly on the wane. It is definitely going down. So that's where we relied a lot upon the prizes, the skee ball, the cyclones, the basketball, hot shot, or whatever it was called. So we relied a lot on that because that translated into the kids wanting to come in and get a prize and play the games. Well, I remember it was like 2000. It had to have been 2004, 2005. The guy that owned the 2 or 3 arcades the guy I worked for called me up one day and asked me how much we made. I said, we made $99.75. And that was for the whole day, $99.75. And now this was in the middle of the week, school week, whatever. This is not like the summertime when all the kids are out. But I remember clear as day, him asking me like 2 times how much we made. And he said, this is the first time ever in our business that they made less than $100.
Wow.
So it was
bad.
It's still on the decline, but to this day, to my the guy who owns it, he still owns one in Lancaster and one in the one I used to work at in Heath, Ohio. So he still has 2 arcades to his name that are still making money to this day, and allow him. This is he owns those businesses. He does for his job. He is a professional. I won't say professional, but he does it as a career. He goes and plays Texas Hold'em.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's a card player. Goes around them, usually down in the Florida area to play. And I was like, man, I don't know how you're going to stay afloat. He's done it. I don't know how, but he's done it. So anyway,
so the arcade supported his gambling habit.
Yes, sir. That's
what I heard.
That's what I always thought. I was like, this place is going to be run into the ground.
This seems relatively illicit.
Either gambles very well or the arcades do very well, one or the other. So
it's not gambling if you win.
There you go. That's right.
My goodness. Thank you very much, Jesse. Pat, any final thoughts?
I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to 2 games real quick. One is that classic game where it's a robot arm and it's an arm wrestling game.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that really didn't judge fairly at all. Just decided when you were going to lose and take your money.
Yep.
Yeah. And there was a Superman arcade game we used to play at Coney Island where it was 2 players, and the second one was basically just a red Superman, and we just always used to call him Captain Marvel.
Nice.
Well, it works.
Josh, any final thoughts?
A couple of games that I had mentioned that I played a lot whenever I was able to find them. I don't know, did you all ever find a game called Virtual On?
No.
That sounds familiar. I don't know if I played that, though.
Yeah, it was a sit-down game, and it was like Sega. It was a Sega game. It was on the Sega Saturn, apparently, but it was basically like a mech battling game in like in an arena. It wasn't first person. It was kind of like right behind your character or whatever, but it was a blast. It was super fun. I played that all the time whenever I found it. And then there was a Capcom fighter that didn't get a whole lot of attention called Rival Schools United by Fate.
Oh, cool.
Super fun game. It was just a classic, brightly colored Capcom fighter. And then the first couple years of college, me and Cheek would always go over to Billy Bob's and play tons of Soul Calibur 2.
Yeah, yep.
Oh, yeah, Cervantes up in there, man.
Yeah, dude.
I went with you on a couple of those excursions.
Yeah, you did. So yeah, last couple games I wanted to throw out there.
Jesse, any last couple of games you want to throw out?
Ooh, boy, I don't know. Afterburner, I'll toss that out there. That was one of the first ever real sit-down games I was excited about because you sat down and you moved like you were in a plane,
I played Afterburner a lot on the Sega Master System.
Not
so good.
Same experience.
No, I'm sure. I still loved it, though.
Also made famous by Hulk Hogan in Suburban Commando.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. The other one, there were so many that really were at Showbiz Pizza that I think that I just gravitated towards. Afterburner was there. Another one I played a lot of was like the original. It was like the arcade Punch-Out.
I never played the arcade version. Never.
I did. I was terrible.
You had a green, like, wireframe little Mac, or I guess I don't know what his name was then, but your first opponent was always Canadian Bear Hugger.
Yeah.
So I love that one. But there's so many that I'm sure, we'll think of after this podcast is over. But I'll give those couple shouts.
I guess one of my last shouts was going to be the Star Wars X-wing game, where you would shoot down,
the wireframe, another wireframe, what do they call that? I can't remember, but I think it's a sit down, right?
Yep, it was a sit down.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I was pretty terrible at it too because you had to go and bomb it. The runs through the trenches of the Death Star and shoot down TIE fighters and stuff. I've pretty much mentioned all my favorites. The one that sticks out in my head right now was there was a Stewart's Hot Dogs in Chapmanville, West Virginia.
Really?
Yeah. It was way down on Route 10 past the golf course.
I got it.
And they had a Street Fighter cabinet. Not Street Fighter 2, the first.
Yeah, first one was so bad.
And I remember putting quarters in it as a kid, being excited because there's Street Fighter 2, and putting quarters in it or putting a quarter in it, and it sucked.
Yeah, yeah.
And I not so much a shout out, just as a memory of that being terrible. But all right, so guys, I do appreciate you all. It's always fun to go down on these little trips down the memory road, and remember some of my favorite times, being in an arcade. So, guys, thank you. I guess we're going to call it a show on this one. So, does anybody have anything, Pat? What are you up to? Give me some, plug some stuff for me here, man.
Pat's still a regular fixture. Usually what would be airing right now as we're recording on Sunday nights on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, which is making a big change if y'all haven't seen. So stay tuned. But yeah, I'd normally be on there Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to talk MMA. Gavin Napier and I just recorded a little teaser that you might have heard for a potential Casual Heroes reinvigoration.
Oh, boy!
Dun dun.
So stay tuned for more of that coming up and we heard you when you polled, we polled, you voted, you want to hear wrestling, so we're going to talk wrestling. So stay on the lookout for that. And Pat's been on a quest raising some money for Shriners Children's Hospitals. So if you've never heard of them, look into them. They do a lot for children with severe disabilities and limitations in terms of helping them to lead a normal life. And they succeed on funding from listeners like you.
Very good. Joshua.
Nope.
Nope. All right.
Nope.
Jesse.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen. No, seriously, Calandris, you moving on? You saying nope?
Yeah, no, I got nothing.
All right, you got nothing. All right. I don't know whether yeah. All right. I couldn't read the room. So, ladies and gentlemen.
Amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. Pat did mention the big change that's happening. We're still reeling from it. We don't know how it's all going to go down, but just be prepared. We may be looking at Spreaker as our home here sometime soon in the future for everything Radulich and Broadcasting Network related. So we're kind of still working on that. Just be prepared. Right now, I think you can go to blogtalkradio.com and find all of our great content that's still there. I do a show called Source Material, and upcoming tomorrow, we're recording our episode on the first 6 issues of the new 52 Aquaman. We're going to be having a good friend of ours, previous co-host, Cole Marentet's going to come on and discuss Aquaman with us. It's one of his favorite characters. Good story. I just finished it today, as a matter of fact. And airing tomorrow on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, Source Material brings to you Black Panther. Who is the Black Panther? Well, the first 6 issues, I think, of the 2005 Black Panther series kind of give us an idea of who the Black Panther is, who his friends are not, and who they are, and what about Wakanda? So yeah, check that out. It was a fun story had by all, and I still hope at some point we can do a live commentary of the 30-minute playthrough of that Avengers game. That gets mentioned on there. It looks like a lot of fun, but does it go well? Well, that's only a question that Mark Radulich can answer because he answers it quite a few times on there. Why should it?
Many times.
Why should it goes well? Other than that,
it goes well.
Other than that, you can follow me at Stiznarkey on Twitter. At SourceMattCast is the Twitter for the Source Material Podcast. Ronnie Adams, I turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. You can catch Screaming Boy Podcast on any kind of social media. On Facebook, just search Screaming Boy Podcast. Instagram, it's Screaming Boy Podcast. And on Twitter, it is at Screaming Boy PR. You can go back and listen to Jesse and I talk about some Star Wars in our last episode entitled The Empire Strikes Out. Because it was, negative reviews for The Last Jedi. But and then we had our television go-go episode, and that was a lot of fun. So check us out on that. I personally, I am raising money as well, Pat, and you reminded me of this, which I was going to plug anyway. But I have joined extralife.org, extra-life.org. And it is basically I'm taking donations for Children's Miracle Network. The money that I'm raising is actually going to Duke Children's Hospital here in North Carolina, and I'm doing that through gaming through Twitch. So if you see me on Twitch, that is why I'm doing it. So if you see me on Twitch, it's SBP Ronnie. Come say hi. Come check it out. If you see me on Facebook or if you see Screaming Boy on Facebook, you see that if I post a link, please, if it's in your budget or whatever, throw a little bit of cash, $5, whatever, for the Children's Miracle Network. If not, that's fine. Just hit that share button and just get it out to your friends. And maybe they can do, whatever. So that would be appreciated. So I'm taking donations for this all the way up to November 3rd, at which point I will have a 24-hour live stream gaming marathon. So I'm hoping I'm going to make it the whole 24 hours, which you could see me freak out in the middle of it. I don't know. It would be awesome. Because I'm probably going to be powered on Monster and fast food, or pizza, and energy drinks and pizza, and I'll probably be in the hospital afterwards. But it's going to be, it's going to be a lot of fun. So it's extralife.org. Just search Ronnie Adams, throw a little bit of money that way, or hit a share button. With that, I'm going to say you can find us on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. For Totally 80s Pat, for Totally Fed Up Josh Calandros, and for the disapproving dad Jesse Starcher. Stay off his lawn and keep the toilet paper in the bathroom, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
Not in his trees. I am Ronnie Adams, and I'm going to say, have a good one. We're out.